This keeps getting more intriguing for the Minnesota Vikings as Kevin O'Connell dropped a handful of major updates that will have big implications for Friday's preseason finale versus the Denver Broncos, as well as the team's regular season outlook, especially after hearing the more concerning updates regarding the offensive line. We're going to break it down all that in this episode of Vikings Digest, but first, we are on our way to hitting 3,300 subscribers before kickoff on Friday night. So if you're a part of the 78% of viewers who are not yet subscribed and you want to stay up to date on all things Vikings, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of the episodes when they drop. And with that, let's hop right into the first topic of the day, which is the QB2 plot is thickening. As Kevin O'Connell took the podium today, he had some updates concerning the quarterback scenario with JJ McCarthy's injury update regarding his ankle, as he stated that he got a rest day in practice today, but he wants him to start on Friday if they feel good about his status. The Vikings are still working through the plan, but KOC expects Carson Wentz to play in Friday's preseason finale against Denver, and he went even further in depth talking about JJ's injury and the expectations, saying he's gotten some work. We kind of split reps yesterday just not to overload him, with the hopes of all along really wanting him to start his final preseason game, and we'll work off of that if we can feel good about him getting those really important reps, because those reps are still very important for his development and moving forward, and he elaborated on that as well, saying that these reps are still so important. I know we look at this as such a big picture thing all the time, but I still look at these reps for a young player as really important. He had a really good offseason, a good training camp, and I still think these reps are important for him to go out there and move the ball, move the team, and put the ball in the end zone, and that's the goal. But also, if we can't get him there, we can't get him there as far as his health is concerned with that little ankle thing that he's got nagging at him or something like that. He didn't say that it was a high ankle sprain or anything like that. Nothing major, but still something that they're going to have to monitor throughout the week and deliver updates as the week goes on, with the expectation being that we knew that all three of the quarterbacks were probably going to play in this game in some extent, but we of course wanted to see what JJ McCarthy was going to do for at least longer than one quarter probably. I feel like the Vikings' initial plan was to have him play probably the first half just to get him all those extra reps that they could have gotten. He said it earlier in the press conference today too, that they wanted to get him more reps on last Saturday against the Baltimore Ravens, and the injury happened. That's why he only played the first quarter. Even though was kind of the expectation going into the game, it still would have been nice to see him get some more reps, even with the injury, kind of fight through it. But hopefully we are able to see him on the field on Sunday, because he has a lot to kind of build on or kind of progress through, because when you look at the stats compared to Carson Wentz, it's a little bit concerning as far as who the QB2 is going to be. And when you look at how they've played throughout the preseason, Carson Wentz has had a much higher completion percentage, much higher passing yards per game, a little bit, only 0.1 more yards per attempt, but he does also have the passing touchdown. Neither of them have turned the ball over, but in every aspect, Carson Wentz seems to be outplaying him, and I know we can't necessarily go off of stats, so if we're not going off of stats, let's look at how they operate the offense, or how the offense looks when they are on the field. Yes, Carson Wentz is going up against a team's third stringers and practice squad guys by the time he's in the game. JJ McCarthy is going up against some starters for a drive and some twos for the most part, so the competition level is going to be very different. However, with the way that Carson Wentz is able to move the ball with these second string guys, with these third string guys, or these practice squad guys, even against a really bad defense that's going it with their third and fourth string guys, he's still able to move the ball with a lot more efficiency than JJ McCarthy was able to do. He was able to open up a little bit more in the passing game and be a lot more accurate. I shouldn't say a little bit more accurate, a lot more accurate, especially when you're looking at that completion percentage. That is something where Carson Wentz is able to consistently move this offense. We knew this from last year. That's why they re-signed him, and that's why I think he is also the X factor in this quarterback room, and I'm going to elaborate more on that in a second, but I think that with him and his veteran presence and what he can do with this offense, I think that he should be the QB2 on this team, and I think that JJ McCarthy still has a little bit of ways to go. But if he can play on Friday night against the Broncos, where they're going up against Bo Nix, who is going to be playing in the game for a little bit, that at least has a little bit more of a story to it with the two guys that were drafted in the same year, as well as trying to see if JJ McCarthy can cement that QB2 job before Carson Wentz can kind of take it from him. I know they split reps yesterday as merely a workload kind of thing, but it still could be something worth monitoring, as JJ McCarthy could lose his grip on that QB2 spot that seemed so secure after the quarterback competition ended. It was always going to be, okay, let's just see if JJ McCarthy is going to be firmly in the QB2 spot. Now that has been brought into question with the way that Carson Wentz has been playing. But Carson Wentz Carson Wentz is just a great guy through and through. So you know that when he's asked about the JJ McCarthy side of things, he is going to be very honest and very nice about it as well, saying that it's definitely hard and he's so young. People can in this day and age with media, social media, things are so driven by a lot of those things, and it can be tough. It can be tough for young guys, and so I feel for him. And as well as on the injury side of things, he said he's had his fair share. They suck. They're no fun. And they're going to overly test you. And so, obviously, I'm bummed for him just for the injuries and different things, how they've gone. But I'm still excited for his future, whatever that may be. Because at the end of the day, he's extremely young, extremely talented. I would just encourage him not to let whatever has happened in these last couple of weeks define the rest of his story, because he's so young and he still has a bright future. Now, this is where I say that Carson Wentz is the X factor in this quarterback room, because he has the veteran presence. He's been through injuries. He's been through a lot of teams. He's been through a lot of media persecution. So he is kind of the perfect guy to have in this quarterback room that consists of Max Brosmer, JJ McCarthy, and Kyler Murray. Because all three of those guys, through the course of the last year alone, just looking at that, they have already gone through their fair share of media scrutiny, and they can look at Carson Wentz for advice on how to deal with that and progress through that. And who else do you have in that quarterback room? Josh McCown, who himself has had a string of teams that he started for and a multitude of systems that he played in, and he faced a lot of media scrutiny and a lot of media love as well. People love Josh McCown, even though he wasn't able to kind of be that solidified starting quarterback. He was still a great backup, and he still could move the ball whenever he needed to. And now Carson Wentz is basically this version of Josh McCown in this generation, and now they're both in the same organization trying to mentor and mold these quarterbacks through all the difficulties that they've been going through. And another quarterback that we can't forget about this, like I said before, is Max Brosmer, which a lot of people are saying that the likely scenario for Friday's game is that Max could play close to the whole game against Denver, as Kevin Seifert was reporting on the KFAM 100.3 with Paul Allen. So that's something that's going to be worth monitoring, as well as seeing if Max Brosmer can maybe kind of throw his hat in the ring, say, hey, maybe I'm worth even a QB3 look. I know that's probably not going to happen, but at least we're going to be able to see if Max Brosmer can put some positive things on tape, so that if he doesn't make this final 53-man roster or just a practice squad guy, if he goes to another team, at least he can kind of put some good stuff on tape to show that he can be a serviceable quarterback for whatever team needs his services, if it's not the Minnesota Vikings. So let us know down in the comments below what you guys think about all this. If you think that Carson Wentz or JJ McCarthy will be the QB2 by the time we get around to week 1 of the regular season. Love to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below, as that's going to take us into the second topic of the day, which is the O-line concerns, as Kevin O'Connell did drop some injury updates on Caleb Tiernan, where he had a little bit of optimism as well, but it didn't seem overly optimistic, saying that he is week to week and they're hopeful he can be back in week 1. The full quote saying that Caleb Tiernan is still week to week. He's doing better. We'll start the progression, but we hope that the targeted data of getting him back for the Green Bay week is still in play. Now, that is more hopeful rather than certain, if you ask me. And with Minnesota being set at the tackle position pretty much, it's more kind of a depth scenario thing where you want to make sure you have depth. But at the same time, too, if Caleb Tiernan needs to be thrust into a different role in the offensive line, you want to make sure his availability is there. Or if they don't want to have Christian Darrisaw on a really heavy workload, you can kind of ease him into it that way and have them rotating in and out. And you're getting Caleb Tiernan some early season reps as well. And it would have been great to have seen him play more in the preseason into this final game as well against the Broncos, because the Broncos are a really good defense through and through as far as depth is concerned. They have everything kind of covered on all bases. So it would have been nice to see what Caleb Tiernan can do against the Broncos starters, at least to start the game. And then as the 2s and 3s kind of get rotated in there, seeing how he held up throughout the course of whatever snaps he was getting. But we're not going to be seeing that. And if we are going to see Caleb Tiernan, it will be in the regular season. So that gives me a little bit of concern that if we are needing to go down by Christian Darrisaw and he has to kind of be taken out for a couple plays or things like that, it gives me a little bit of concern that Caleb Tiernan doesn't have fully the reps that we want him to have as a rookie tackle coming into here. But at least they can kind of show that it's not a serious long-term injury and he's going to be back at some point this season. Where the other part of concern, I think, is even more so on the offensive line is at the center position, because as we all know and have been worried about all season, is that our offensive line, for the most part, 4 out of 5 of them are all fantastic. We got Donovan Jackson, you got Christian Darrisaw, you got Brian O'Neill, you got Will Fries in there. The outlier is Blake Brandel at center, and center is kind of an important position on the offensive line, because that's the guy who is starting every single play. And with the reports that we're seeing come out of the Minnesota Vikings training camp and things like that, so the Vikings had an opportunity to select a center in the early part of the draft this past April, but they believe the floor of Blake Brandel would match the rookie selected. And after Minnesota took Jake Golday 41st overall, Iowa center Logan Jones and Florida center Jake Slaughter were selected in the same round. And Alec Lewis elaborated further as well, just saying simply that that was a decision they made, just believing that the floor Blake Brandel gives you would match that what a rookie would have given. That's a little bit concerning, even though, on a skill level basis, but it would have kind of made more sense if they would have gotten a veteran center maybe at free agent and during free agency. Would have been a little bit expensive, but it still would have made a boatload more sense than trusting a guy that you think is going to have the same level of pedigree as a rookie center in the second round. Ben Gosling also chimed in on it, saying that he has been working to improve his accuracy of his shotgun snaps, and we saw Murray have to go low for another one in Tuesday's practice. We know Kyler Murray is short, but he's not that short, as another report that came out of practice from Vikings fan page who's in Minnesota was saying that he was watching during joint practice, and there was a few times that the ball would barely leave the dirt when Brandel was doing shotgun snaps off to the side with coaches. Now, I think this is a little bit concerning because, yes, Kyler Murray's short, but you don't want the ball being snapped all the way at his ankles, for God's sakes. You want to make sure that you can get that thing right in the breadbasket and make sure that he can keep his eyes upfield, not have to worry about throwing his kind of form out of whack or anything like that. And this is where I think Minnesota needed to go and get a veteran center in free agency. They didn't do it. They wanted to save money. They reworked deals and things like that. Then after the draft came and went and they didn't get a center with a high draft mark, and now we hear this, that, okay, they trusted in his floor comparable to a rookie. Why the hell haven't they gone out and gotten a veteran center at this point on a veteran minimum deal? It makes no sense to me at this point, because when you look at Minnesota's offensive line, we look at the NFC North in general, as far as centers are concerned, it's not very good or very deep for the most part. Blake Brandel might be considered the best center in the NFC North. That's not a good thing, folks. And if Minnesota wants to make a playoff run or a championship run, you need a solid center, and a really good one at that, especially when you have an offensive line that's already full of 4 dogs. You want to make sure that you have a 5th one in there, especially when that 5th one is right in the middle, snapping the ball every play. But let us know down in the comments below what you guys have to think about the Blake Brandel situation, with the Caleb Tiernan situation, as well as the JJ McCarthy and Carson Wentz situation. Love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments, as it's always a fun time reading through all of them and seeing what you guys have to say. But for now, that's going to do it for this episode of Vikings Digest. I've been your host, Griffen. Take care.